Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
This is episode 17 of the FAB Podcast on Wisp Sports Radio. Wisp Sports Radio is brought to you by Highlands Earache Drops. Have you been diagnosed with an earache by a physician? For natural relief due to earache pain, fever, irritability, and sleeplessness, try Highlands Homeopathic Earache Drops and Tablets. Highlands has been trusted for generations to provide safe, effective homeopathic medicines for all members of the family. There's no alcohol and no sting. You can get back to doing what you love. Go to highlands.com/ear-pain to find a retailer near you. That's highlands.com/ear-pain. Claims are based on traditional homeopathic practice, not accepted medical evidence. Not FDA evaluated. Read and follow label directions.
Excuse me.
The FAB Podcast is the weekly show brought to you by Females in Athletic Business, for the women in sports business, where we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage. Welcome to this week's episode. My name is Kristin Ray, and I am the founder of Females in Athletic Business and one of your hosts of the FAB Podcast. We are continuing our series on networking at sports industry events today, so we're welcoming back business owner, trainer, and master networker, Janice Porter. Janice, thanks so much for being with us again.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
So for any of our listeners who didn't catch our first episode with Janice, first of all, I would really recommend hanging back, checking that out at some point, because Janice has talked about how there are really three really good steps to her networking process. And we talked about that first step in the first episode that we did with Janice. And the first step, just to quickly review, was how to do some really good research into the event that you plan on attending, as well as some of the people that might be at that event. So with that being said, I would recommend checking that out at some point if you didn't catch it the first time. But we are going to cover the second step in her process today, which I believe is going to be how to make the most of your time at the actual event that you're going to, which I'm guessing, Janice, isn't as easy as just showing up. So let's start at the beginning. When we walk into a networking event, whether it be like a mixer after work or more of a convention, exhibition hall type thing, which can be really intimidating, what would our first step be when we get to an event?
Well, if you have done your homework, then you know that there may be certain people there that you're looking to meet. And yes, I agree with you that it can be intimidating when you go into a big hall full of people, especially those introverts. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit too. But basically, what I recommend is go early, get the lay of the land. Don't come in, half an hour after something started and think that you can just pick up, because you want to make sure that you're comfortable enough and that you can see where people are hanging out. And maybe even as you come, in some cases, there's a registration, or, you get a name tag, or they check your name off. That's the first thing that I might do, is say, would you point the organizer out to me, please? Or could you tell me where so-and-so might be? Because if you're specifically looking for somebody, the greeters and the people at the registration can often point you in the right direction. I mentioned name tags, and I know this is silly, but in some cases, and people have differing views on it. Some people say wear them. Some people say you don't need them. Some people say wear them on the left. Some people say wear them on the right. And I tend to go with wear them on the right, on your lapel, or, on your above your chest area. And that's because when you go to shake hands with somebody, their eye line goes to your right side, I think. And then I'm also one of these people, because I'm a bit more confident about networking, because I've been doing it for so long, that sometimes I don't wear one, and I don't wear one on purpose, because it allows me to use that as part of the opening conversation, and also allow. Exactly. Yeah. So little things like that sometimes can make a difference.
Right. It forces you to introduce yourself a little bit, right? Okay. So show up early, which I think sometimes can be intimidating in and of itself because you don't want to be, the awkward first couple of people there. But I also think the fewer people there when you get there, the better, the easier that it will be if you are someone who's maybe less outgoing, because you won't feel like you've shown up in the middle of everyone's already established conversations.
Exactly.
And I think that is a big thing that some people struggle with when they think about showing up to one of these events. But if we either couldn't come early or we're about to move from maybe one table to the next, talk about what might be some appropriate or not awkward ways to integrate yourself into an already established conversation or group of people, or maybe even some people who might seem a little cliquey and you're kind of like, oh, I really just want to dip out of here. This isn't me. If we have to put ourselves into an already established kind of conversation, what's a good way to do that?
Well, first of all, I think that you need to be aware. So if it's a standing event, you can see the open groups versus the closed groups. So
so body language is big.
Right. Huge, right? So if someone's talking face to face with someone and they're very closed they're directly facing each other, that doesn't feel like something you can join. If there's, like one foot to the side and there's sort of an opening there, that's a different thing. If there's 3 or 4 people, same thing. If there's a little bit of a open stance, then it may seem okay to come in and join in. And I tend to ask, would you mind if I join in on the conversation? Or, sometimes somebody will see that you're kind of hovering and they'll invite you to join them. And that's, to me, the extrovert kind person that understands what it's about, that will say, come join us, whatever. But you actually made me think of one other thing. So in your mind, are you thinking of tables and people sitting at round tables and sort of hopping around? I was thinking more of standing room only type events. But in the case of like a breakfast meeting or an after 5 where there are tables and you're supposed to sit at some point, it's a kiss of death if you go in and sit down. Because I often will go to like a women's event that I go to on a regular basis. And you can see before the event has actually started that some people come in and they sit down at a table. Now, are you expecting, that people will come to you? Because that's not how, right? So be careful that you don't be one of those people. I say mingle, look at the trade tables, start conversations, depending on, of course, the event, the type of event, but be in that fluid motion, so that you can find where someone will invite you to that conversation, or you go directly to one and ask to join them. You might say, this is the first time I've been to one of these events. Do you mind if I join your conversation? If you come with a friend, be careful. You can start by the 2 of you talking, but you want to spread out. You want to be at different tables or different parts of the room so that you can get the most out of the situation.
Okay, so use your friends as the comfort zone to maybe get you there, to give you the courage to get you there, but don't rely on them the whole time or else you're not going to get the most out of it. Yeah. It's tempting to have your safety blanket there, for sure.
It's tempting, right? It's tempting.
So, okay, here's my next question. This is something that I struggle with when I'm at these events. Once you kind of find yourself in a really good conversation, maybe with one person or a few people, and you feel like it's clicking, it's really easy to just like stay that way for the whole event. And I ask myself, is it just as valuable for me to spend 40 minutes with 3 people that I'm really getting along with as 5 minutes apiece with maybe 8 different people that I might just get to know for a few minutes? Which is more valuable, more people, less time, or fewer people, more time?
Oh, thank God you said it that way. It's my favorite and worst thing. Fewer than, less than. Pet peeve of mine. Anyway, that's an aside. Great question. And I think part of that comes from what your intention is, which we talked about last time, and what your goal is, you should set a goal like I'm here to meet 5 new people that can get me perhaps closer to the company I want to work for, or referral partners, or someone who can, help me with something in my business. Whatever it is that your goal is, have one that gives you that thing in the back of your mind that says, okay, I need to make sure that I speak to 5 people today, or whatever that goal is. But if you are having a great conversation with someone, you also have to think, is this the right person, or am I just using it so I don't have to go talk to someone else, right? You really have to be honest about that. And you also have to look at being honest and true to that goal that you've set for yourself, and say, I'm really enjoying our conversation, and I would love to continue it. This is where you then get to say, would you be open to connecting again next week over coffee or over Zoom, or however you want to do it? And do you have a business card?
Okay, so
so that you can then move on and say, thank you so much. I must move on because I promised myself I would talk to 5 new people today. Be honest, like nothing better than the truth.
Right. Okay. Sure. So love the fact that you're having this wonderful, constructive conversation, and let them know that you're enjoying it, and you're thinking that it could be maybe useful for both of them, and that you're not wanting to end it prematurely, but that there are some other people that you wanted to touch base with before you go. Would you be okay if I contacted you next week via blah 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 blah? And that way, it's not like, well, see you later, but it is making sure that not only you get what you want out of your goal, but that everybody else in the room isn't seeing you as someone who just is sticking close, having one of those close conversations too.
No, I think it's important, though, also to come to an event, because inevitably people are going to say to you, oh, so what do you do? Or who do you work for? Or what brought you here today? Because I like to say, so what brings you here? Or is this the type of, have you come to these events in the past? How have they been for you? What are you looking for today? Maybe I can help you. You want to have some questions that will be conversation starters with people. But at some point, someone's going to ask you what you do or who you work for. So do have, a 30-second hit that you can answer with that creates curiosity. You don't have to give them.
I was going to say that hit can't be, it has to somehow be almost open-ended, right? To continue the conversation. Whatever you answer that question with has to have something that can make the conversation continue, right?
Either that, or when you give your 30-second thing, you end then with a question for them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I like to think that when I'm at a networking event, it's not about me looking for business directly, because nobody's there to buy anything. Everyone's there to sell their own wares or to promote their own business or company or whatever. So I think of it as an opportunity to learn about somebody or about their company and so on, so that maybe I can help them, because the law of reciprocity works in great ways, right? You help someone, you help people enough, and it comes back to you tenfold. So it's for me, it's like, well, I work with, there's different ways you can say it. So you could say something in my, one of the things that I do, I might say, well, have you noticed how so few people that you meet at networking events ever follow up with you? And they may laugh and say yes or no or whatever. And you say, well, that's what I help people with. And then say, well, what do you do? Or how do what's your prime business? I give them a little bit, but then I throw it back at them, because I really want to find out more about them for more than one reason, right? I want to know if there is a fit for us moving forward. And I also want to see how I might be able to help them.
So a little bit of you, a little bit of them at almost every point to make sure you're getting something, but you're giving something.
Yes, and be careful though. Yes, be very careful to not go into when someone asks you, because they'll say, and what do you do, or who do you know, what do you do with that company or whatever. And some people who are maybe not so comfortable or maybe too comfortable and want to just make it all about them, just go into this long diatribe about what they do, or the reason their company is so amazing and blah, blah, blah. And you know what it's like when someone asks you, they don't really want to know that level of detail. They're in some cases, they're just trying to start a conversation too.
Right. It's just habitual. They're just asking the standard questions that come out at these things. Yeah. It doesn't always feel like they want to know.
But if you're conscious of that, yeah. So if you're conscious of that, make it about them, because you know what? They love talking about themselves. Everybody does.
Okay. So
go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say the best compliment that you can get at a networking event when someone leaves to go talk to someone else, when they say, oh, I just had a great time talking to you. It was so amazing. And you know that they did all the talking.
Yep.
Right? But you also know that you got to a point where you said, you know, I'd love to continue this conversation. Would you be open to a call next week? Let's, arrange a coffee or whatever. So, yeah.
There's so much to think about. One of the things I thought was interesting that you brought up in our last chat, and I want to bring back up today because it relates more to about this second step that we're talking about today. It seems really tactical, yes, and it seems really obvious. But you mentioned how it's important for women to show up to these type of events. And it's going to sound so silly. It's not silly. It's so real, but it's very tactical. Show up to these type of events with a pocket. And I know everyone who's listening is like, wow, we just went from really abstract how to talk to someone to show up with a pocket. But having gone to several of these in my time, nothing is worse than showing up and then someone, thank God, asking you for your business card, which is like a win, right? And you can't find one because it's at the bottom or the third, secret pocket of your purse, or you've forgotten one, or just the process of you finding it is awkward. So talk a little bit about what is the most smooth, professional way to have those items ready. And also, you talked a little bit about saying, I really enjoyed talking with you today. Would it be okay with you if I gave you a call next week to maybe grab a coffee? Mm-hmm. Would that be the best time to then, whip out your business card?
Well, and I totally understand where you're coming from. It's a great question because it is practical and it is necessary from a female standpoint, really. Okay, so I'm going to answer both of those parts of the question. There are three types of people who network: connectors, collectors, and what I call jerks. So a connector is somebody who likes to help others and sincerely wants to connect people and introduce people and see if it, helps them move their business forward or get the connection they want at a company and so on. The collector is the person who's very busy giving out their business cards and trying to collect them just to say when they leave, oh, I got 20 business cards at that event. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the jerk, of course, is not interested in anybody else at all. Their focus is on getting whatever they want. And they usually take everybody's business card, they leave, they never come back, and then they add you to their email list.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Which is really annoying. So, so when you have that conversation and you're about to, exit and you really enjoyed the conversation and you want to further it, to me, it's not as important that I give them my business card as it is to ask for theirs.
Right, because you're going to do the work to follow up.
Exactly. Right. And I know we're going to talk about the follow-up piece next time, Kristin, but what's really important is that I am in control of the future follow-up. So even if I forgot my business cards, and by the way, if you forgot them, don't say you forgot them. Just say, I'm just in the process of getting new ones printed and I don't have them yet. So would you mind if I took yours?
That's great advice.
Right? Don't sound like you came to the event without them on purpose or, because you forgot because you knew you were going to a networking event. But it's certainly okay to give your card, but I'd much rather get theirs. So if you ask for theirs, they'll probably ask you for yours. So if you're wearing a jacket and you have your purse with you, make sure you've got some cards in your pocket because it's easier to get them out, or even a back pocket of your slacks if you have a pocket, or a skirt pocket or whatever. Just easier. But if you have your purse and it is one of those with all those complicated, pockets and so on.
Horrible pockets.
Yeah. The other thing is most of us now have our phones in our hand, don't we?
I was going to say, would it be okay to have them in your phone case?
Yes, of course it would. And the other thing that's really cool is if somebody says, I have sometimes said, and this is partly because of my send out cards thing, but I've sometimes said, hey, if they didn't have a business card, but it was a really, great conversation, as well as giving them theirs, just said, would you mind and opening your phone and just say, just give me your name and phone number and email right here. And if you don't mind, let me taking a picture of you, then I can make sure that I know who you are. And you attach the picture to the contact.
Okay. So perfect. So, and most people that are at these events are going to be, industry people who are current. They're not going to be people who, aren't comfortable with their cell phones for the most part. So most people will be okay with it. I like that idea because then it's already ready for you to go. You don't have to worry about losing their business card in your purse, which is I think the thing I'm most guilty of.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Again, it does depend. It does depend on the level of hitness, I guess, in one respect, of those people, whether they're comfortable doing that. Something else I wanted to share though. I talked about having a list of questions ready.
Which it sounds very important. And mostly not so necessarily you absolutely stick to them because they do help you with your goal, but mostly so, would you say, to avoid the awkward silences and to more easily get yourself into a conversation?
Yes. And I think also, I guess as much as we love to talk about it today, I would say stay away from politics, but I would have something that's going on, like with just recently the World Cup soccer, right? Which was huge and very exciting event. And, if these are sports people, you might, want to say something about that. Did you guys watch that? Or, what did you think of it being in Russia and how it went? Or something that shows that you're up to date with what's going on at that time. Like for me right now, I'm devastated because DeMar DeRozan's been traded from the Toronto Raptors.
Yep. Yeah. But that's a great example though. If you're at a sports industry function, I'm one more who ends up with my job facilitating my staff members to go to these functions. At this point in my career, I'm kind of, everyone's travel agent at this point. But these are things that I remind them to do when they're going to these events. Make sure that you haven't just spent the last 3 days at this conference, not following up on social media and not paying attention to what's going on outside of this conference, because at some point at the end of the conference, when you're at the exhibition hall, absolute social mixer at the end of it, you have to know what's happening in the outside world. And if you're not up to date on the one big thing, like LeBron, going to LA, you're going to look silly, especially at a sports industry conference. So make sure you've at least done a little bit of current events homework for whatever industry you're in before you show up to an industry event, so that you don't just come across as someone who, for instance, is looking for a job but is completely out of touch with the industry.
Now, you just made another point, though, with industry events like trade shows and big conferences that you're going to quite a bit ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yep,
it's a really good idea to see if you can find out who is going there that you do want to connect with, that you would like to connect with, and see if you can connect with them, say through LinkedIn ahead of time. I see that you're on the list to be presenting at this event I'm going to, or I see that you have a trade booth at the event I'm going to. I would love to have a few minutes with you. And so what you've done is you've introduced yourself ahead of time.
So then talk to us about how to connect that once we're there. What does that conversation sound like once you see them at their booth, or once you are walking up to them after their presentation?
Well, first of all, did they acknowledge you when you reached out ahead of time? And if they did, then you would say, would it be okay if I come up and introduce myself? Or when, at a certain break, I will come up and, say that I'll come and introduce myself. As long as you've had that, that warm conversation before you go, I would just introduce myself and say, I'm Janice Porter. I connected with you a couple of weeks ago because I'm so excited to actually, to have heard you speak here, or to meet you in person because I follow your column, or whatever it is, right? And see if you can get 5 minutes with them. It depends what it's for, right? If it's, I'm so excited to meet someone in your company, and I wondered if I could have 10 minutes to ask you some questions about, working for that company, that type of thing.
Well, you've given us so much to think about already in episode 1, and now we've got a lot to digest from episode 2 of our series about networking. I want to thank you again for being with us today. And like Janice mentioned earlier, we are going to finish her series at some point. I'm hoping in early fall, when she talks about how to follow up from these events. But Janice, in the meantime, tell our listeners more about what you kind of previewed about how you are the company, if you will, that you use to follow up. Give us a preview of that right now so that we can pique our interest before the 3rd episode. And then also just tell us where we can get a hold of you or get in touch with you or see what you're about.
Can I do one more thing before I do that?
Of course.
I just want to share one more thing that I want to set out there as a challenge to people when they're going to any kind of a networking event. And I believe it's a skill that you can learn and practice, and that is remembering people's names.
Oh, it's so important.
Okay. So it goes back to the name tag thing, but it also goes back to the introductions of, hi, Kristin. Was that how you say your name? Kristin? I want to be sure, right? So I will say it a couple of times in that first introduction. Kristin, that's pretty. Do you spell it with an E-N or an I-N? Something that will help me remember it, and something that will show you that I'm interested in remembering it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I forget your name, but I'm having that conversation with you and you don't have a name tag on, then I might say again, okay, please tell me your name one more time. I'm really bad at remembering names, but I'm trying. Kristin. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Right? Things like that. So I challenge you to be conscious of that when you're at an event, because people love to hear their own name.
And it just shows that you're listening, which is, like we mentioned, not everybody at these events are there to listen about other people. They're there to talk about themselves. So if you are the type of person that can use someone else's name 3 or 4 times in a conversation, it makes you stick out to them, and it will help them stick out in your mind too.
Exactly. So thanks for letting me share that. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the biggest thing for me. And people tell me this all the time, that I'm the follow-up queen. I don't forget people. And I go, forget people's names. And one of the things that I do use is a tool called Send Out Cards. And Send Out Cards is a system that allows you to stand out from the crowd and be remembered and be top of mind with people. So I'd love to share a little bit more about that next time, along with other ways to follow up with people. And if anybody wants to reach out and to me, they can find me at janiceporter.com, and they can find me on LinkedIn. And I would love to connect. And if anyone has any questions that they want answered in the follow-up call, then I'm happy to address them. So I love meeting new people. Tell me where that I met you through this recording and this organization, and I'm happy to meet them.
That's amazing. Thank you again, Janice, for being here for episode 2 of our networking series, and stay tuned this fall for episode 3. Thank you again, Janice. It was all such good information. I feel like I should be taking notes, but that's what's great about a podcast is you can always go back and take notes. It's there forever. So thanks again.
If anybody wants help with an infomercial or what to say, I do teach people how to do those kinds of things. So you'll see it on my website.
So like an elevator speech or something like that? Okay. Good advice. Good advice.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
If you are enjoying the FAB podcast, which hopefully you are by listening, Wisp Sports Radio can be found on any podcast app. Follow Wisp Sports on social media at Wisp Sports. Please give us a 5-star review on iTunes to help promote coverage of women in sport. Thanks for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere. To follow Females in Athletic Business or this podcast, use @FabSportsOrg on social media. The FAB Podcast is a co-production of Females in Athletic Business and Wisp Sports. Check Females in Athletic Business out at fabsportsorg.com. And please visit our sponsors at highlands.com/ear-pain. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the FAB Podcast when we sit down with a sports industry career coach. See you next week.